The sun is barely visible through the perpetual red haze. Freak storms of lightning and hail pepper the landscape at random. Once great civilizations now lie in ruin and decay, all around and beneath your feet. No one truly knows how it all came to pass, as no recorded history remains. If there are answers, they lie in the wastelands where great cities once stood atop countries and continents. Now all that remains is rubble and myth. Welcome, listeners, to Over the Table, the very first episode of it. My name is Hunter, and on this show, I interview various TTRPG creators and content makers as well. And today, I have a very special guest. He is the creator of Dystopian Dawn, a post-apocalypse TTRPG, which you just heard the first two paragraphs of the setting about. Would you please care to introduce yourself?
I'm Tony. I created the game, and we're on the 5th book, just launched, 3 successful Kickstarters. So Time Warped is my new source and adventure book. The Kickstarter backers will get theirs, should be the end of this month, and then it'll be available to everyone else, probably July or August. And I just launched my own website, finally. So that's what's new with me, and that's me.
Yep, and of course, I was happy enough. I got to playtest one of the adventures for Time Board. We will eventually get to that, but I usually like to start these kind of conversations with kind of your background with tabletop role-playing games. Like, how'd you get started into it, and what led up to where you are today, basically?
Well, today I'm working on minimal sleep and lots of caffeine.
Same here.
I'm a retired Army. And I've been a nerd since 1980 is the first time I played D&D, real D&D. I'm going to throw that out there to make people mad. I was in art class in 7th grade, and they had the deities and demigods and the monster manual sitting out. And I was curious. I walked over there and just started chatting with dudes. And at the time, I just finished reading the Elric Saga by Michael Moorcock. And that was the original deities that had the Meldomene mythos in it. And that's what happened to be open on the table. We started chatting. We started nerding out. It was the art that drew me in. And then from there, we started, I was brought into the group. And I think within like a month or two, I ended up being the DM. Bastards. Anyway, because you know how that goes. New group. It's like, hey, throw the books at the new guy. So from that point, I'm smitten. I've played just about every game out there. I think the other day I listed it on Twitter. Someone was asking just the games you'd ran, and I'm just trying to go through memory. I think it was about 30 or 40 games I've ran over the years. Everything from D&D to, GURPS to, Chill to the whole World of Darkness spectrum, Cthulhu, Conan, on and on and on. Because used to be, up until the 90s, I was collecting systems. And because I like the different genres and like to switch things up. And back then, you had to. If you wanted to play gangsters, I bought, actually I had a dumb game called Gangsters. And I say dumb game because it was pretty bad. But we still played it.
Curiosity, was it like gangster with an exclamation point at the end of it?
No, it was Gangsters.
Okay, because I have one I found. It's an old 1986 one called Gangster, and it's an exclamation point, and it's basically like it's a basically whole setup for how to run like a gangster like setting from like Mafia all the way to modern day. So, huh?
Oh no, this one was specifically set in like the 20s and 30s.
Oh, it's this one covered a whole range of decades and years. So, but it was released in like I think it was 1986, I believe, and I discovered it on Drive-Thru-RPG. So that's why I was curious if we were talking about happened to have the same game or not. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I played that too. So,
then again, I haven't played it since the early 90s, so who knows? But that was when a buddy of mine who was actually one of the play testers for GURPS 3rd edition. He came over and a friend of ours, Steph, she wanted to run a game, so she ran a kind of a Three Musketeers game with GURPS. And at first it seemed very daunting because there's so many options. And it's so easy to die in GURPS. But after I realized that it's one system for any genre, it was kind of like the Lord of the Rings moment, one book to rule them all. We had a group of about 8 to 12 people on any given weekend, and we rotated the DM seat. we started converting, whether it was D&D or Palladium or World of Darkness or even Villains of Vigilantes, we started converting everything over to GURPS because of that flexibility. So I got hooked on GURPS way back when. And then, we would pick up new games all the time because there was a company we would buy stuff. Started with the old card game Jihad. They had to change the name to Vampire.
I can see why.
They spelled it with a Y to be different. I actually still have like 4,000 cards. It's one of the best card games ever made. It was really fantastic. So a bunch of us would go in, and because if the dude had, like, if you ordered X hundreds of dollars, you got like X percent. So we'd all pool our money until we got that 40% discount. And with that 40%, we saw that as free money. So we would go random game, random game, random game, random game, and try new stuff. So I've always been into that. I always like looking at the mechanics and the stories. Those are the two key things that draw me in to playing the game. So anyway, so there's my gazillion 100th century years. I'm a Methuselah gamer of gaming. Dystopian Dawn actually started as kind of a backhanded dare from one of my buddies, one of my gamers. We were, 2.5 years ago, I think, maybe 3. I forget we were trying it, but he's like, hey, you're always making house rules. You're always changing stuff and fixing it. And that part was the compliment. Why don't you make your own game? And I went, well, shit, I don't have an answer for that.
Challenge accepted, basically.
So gauntlet was thrown. I went, well, okay. So then I sat down and going, all right, what kind of game do I want to make? The first one I wrote, it was called Chaos with a K because it's different and edgy and stupid. And it was good, but it was very crunchy. It was very rules heavy. And it was, at the end of it, I stopped. I had a couple hundred pages written and went, all I did was make another fantasy game. What the hell? And so I kind of pushed that aside, started going through all the different genres that I've loved over the years, from movies, books, games, etc., and went, I need to just smash all of this together. I need to do something that's different. Because putting out, another, hey, look, here's another hack and slash game. I'll put it on the pile of the other 300 I own. So I've always loved dystopian stuff, Planet of the Apes, Thundar the Barbarian, Soylent Green. All of that has always been some of my favorite things to read or to watch. So with that in mind, I went back and scrapped the mechanics and started over. The first play test was about a year later, and it sucked. I had written this glorious, I'm going to put it, game that painted me into a corner. So the character creation process was not what you saw now. It wasn't the fun, fluid, simple process that's in the game now. It was painful. And I was really bad at myself. I think the first character creation took about 2 hours.
Oof.
Yeah, it was awful. And because I had tried to cover too many things. I did the what if factor on everything. So all of the rules were there. And I realized this is way too crunchy. And the wizards were OP as hell. I didn't have a balance system with the magic yet.
Yeah, that's one of them.
It was painfully obvious. So scrapped that. I rewrote the entire mechanics over the next several months. And then we came back, play tested it, and everyone loved it. That's when I added the evolution tables. And from there, everyone went, okay, now I think we've got something. And then I spent a couple months with a group of people I predominantly didn't know, of varying age groups. I think I only knew one person in the group when we started because I wanted playtesting from people that didn't know me, Got some pretty brutal feedback and some good feedback. Tweaked it a bit. Finished the playtest, and I think it was, it's a couple of the adventures that are in the GM's guide. Because there's 4 starter scenarios in there. The Wizard of Kablah, Death Race 2526. There's another one about a lich. I forget what it's called. It's actually about the recycling center. It's a really funny one. And the the were jackal what was it? The were jackal beast, the were jackalope. Sorry, it's been a long time since I ran that one. So those came about from that group that I did an initial playtest with. They had so much fun. They're like, we want to keep going. So every 2 weeks, I was scribbling a new part of an adventure for this new group of people I didn't know. And we got done with those 4, and I'm like, okay, we're good. They're like, no, we want to play some more. What the? So that's where Danger Zone came in. So the first book that I put out post the core rules is a campaign, and it adds 6 locations, and they had a blast with it, and it just kind of grew from there. So yeah, there was close to a year and a half of actual playtesting and tweaking before I thought it was ready to do the Kickstarter.
So I was just reading over something really quick. But yeah, just kind of point out what you said about character creation. That's one of my big things. Even though like I'm usually a forever GM, I have gotten the chance to play in a lot of different games recently, and there are some games that I would open the book, try to go through the character creation, and then there are some games like I would just get so frustrated trying to figure out how it's supposed to work, I just put it aside. One of those, I got 2 games that stick out to me when I think about like horrible like character creation process. And the first one's going to give me some flack, Call of Cthulhu, because the instructions are right there on the page, but how you figure everything out, you got to flip through all the various chapters in the book. And that is like, it's like, okay, I got to go back, figure out, got to flip through, find that. And the Power Rangers tabletop role-playing game by Renegade Studios was basically the same thing. Is here's what you do it, now flip through all the chapters to figure out all the different things you got to make for it. Which kind of turned me off from getting that because I bought the PDF, and then I'm like, well, now I just feel like I wasted my money. Because I bought it just came out, and I bought it like full price, so that was on me.
Yeah.
And so, I haven't had a chance to make a character in Dystopian Dawn yet. The only one I've done is the one that you gave me when we playtested Time Warp. But from the looks of it, how everything sits up, I would agree it is a little... like, it's still kind of crunchy, just compared to some of the games I've played in the past. But, like, it is a lot more simple and streamlined in how you go about making it. So that's one thing I do appreciate about Dystopian Dawn for sure, when I look through it.
Well, so far, that's one of the biggest feedbacks I've gotten from new players at conventions and whatnot, and who jump into our Discord games, is it's a very different style of character creation. And I got that one page, it's a cheat sheet that says, here's your 6 steps. That's what you got to do. So you pick, where are you from, man? And then from there, you roll on the evolution tables. And that kind of, it plugs in, you have a birth table, a pre-adolescent, and a birth, kid, pre-adolescent. So the intent is these are what shaped you up until the age of 18 or so, and then you go on to your adventuring career. So it's anything from a wizard poisoned your water supply with radioactive waste, X number of mutations, to you were kidnapped by mutants, etc., etc. So it's little silly things, and what they do is with each roll of 2d6. There's a partial sentence, like, wizard poison water supply, ... You were stolen by mutants, ... At the end, you put those 3 sentences together, there's your background. And so you can either use those 3 sentences as, that's it, that's my background, I'm done, or you can build on that, because some people love to write, background stories, others hate it. So far, everyone, including Elvin Maid, she actually interviewed me for the magazine she just put out. And she put an article in there about her group doing character creation, how much fun she had with it. So it seems crunch, but it from that chart, but that's all it is you do your evolution. From there, you're like, all right, what character class am I? And if you're not a spellcaster or a psionicist, you just pick your skills. You're done. You buy your skills. That's it. If you're a spellcaster, you buy your skills, but oh wait, I need to spend those same points for my magic. There's the balance. And the same with psionicists. The psionicists are mutants only, and I made that where you roll randomly for what your psionic ability is, because it is a mutation. So you don't get to choose that, but you do get to choose your disciplines underneath it. So, like, say if you're a telepath, you get to choose the talents you have, but you were born a telepath, so forth. And it actually goes by really fast. So, yeah, like I said, everyone's had a really good time with it. I ran it at 3 conventions last year. And every one of them, the tables ended up going well over the allotted hours. I got no sleep in Phoenix or Tucson last year. It was brutal.
You just went to
a tangent.
You just went to a convention recently, didn't you? I think you posted up a picture of a table.
That was in December.
Oh, okay. I thought that
I
was
went
recent.
to a local comic shop. The table picture I posted, I think that was from either RenCon or the Tucson Comic Con, and that was last year. I am going to, actually have a table where I can run games and sell games, a hybrid table, at the Tucson Comic Con in September, and the RenCon, which is also in Tucson, in November. I didn't do Phoenix this year because, to be brutally honest, it's too expensive. It's a 3.5-hour drive, and ended up losing money. And as an indie, that's not a good thing. I met some good people and ran some great games, but between the hotel fees, the con, and everything else, it was like, this really wasn't worth it.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love doing. What I do with this show is just being able to interview like the podcasters and the creators that I've discovered and gotten to love, and just putting a spotlight on them, because some of these independent people just don't get enough love, I think, for what they make and do. And so
I appreciate it, truly.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting just to point out to the listening audience is if you haven't realized me by now, there's a big, I want to call it like, I guess, a TTRPG age gap between me and Tony per se, because I didn't start playing until 2019, and I started with Powered by the Apocalypse, which is a very more simplified system. And then I'm talking to like an OG D&D player. It's a young grasshopper talking to the wise old sage, basically. Which, to be perfectly honest, Tony, when I first started talking to you, I thought you were like in your 30s and 40s. So I was blown away the first time I saw him, like, oh wait, he's that old?
Hey, God damn it. Yeah, I just hit 56 this year.
Yeah, well, you look very good for 56, though. I will say that.
Well, thank you. It's I don't know what to say to that. I don't know.
Don't worry.
I've grown the beard out because anyone can't see it. You can see the beard. My wife and my grandson, that's right, grandson, they like the big beard. So at Christmas, Pop-Up has to, I dress up as Santa Claus, so he'll just see part of he'll see the beard and then the outfit as I sneak out the door after leaving presents, and that's what makes Christmas worthwhile. He's 4, and he's like my best buddy. My wife watches him 3 days a week, and so he comes, as soon as I come out of my office, because I work from home, he's like, "Where's Pop-Up?" And he just follows me around the house, and it is the freaking greatest. Yeah, I was actually terrified when our son said they were pregnant. I was like, "Oh, you son of a... You have officially made me old. That's like the benchmark, man." And I was freaking out till I held that little guy in my arms, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm an idiot. This is awesome." And it's a lot more fun. I always thought it was a joke, but being a grandparent is 10 times more fun than being a parent, because you can give them back.
Yeah. I got a little, he's 5 now, but when he was born, so during the winter, I usually will grow out my beard, and it's this, even though the hair is brown, the beard, the longer it grows, the more ginger it will turn due to my Irish ancestry, I think it's chalked up to. But when he was born, just picture me, my son sitting on my lap, and he would just rub his head up against my beard as he was just laying there. And then when I grow it back out, now to this day, he likes to feel on it, and then I have to stop him because now he wants to reenact that scene from Polar Express where the kid's pulling on the guy's beard. So I gotta stop him from doing that. But
for a while, I just had the goatee. My wife, I think she has a lumberjack fetish. I don't know. So she likes me to have the full beard. That joke went back several years. We've been together a long time. So we were with some friends, made a crack. We were out drinking wine and whatnot. And the following week, she'd ordered flannels for me.
That's hilarious.
Like,
I love that.
yeah, my wife's amazing. I was like, you doubled down on that joke. I respect that. But Draven, so if I shave the sides, he has to touch my face like you screwed something up. It's missing. What's wrong with you?
So, anyways, boom. Going back to Dystopian Dawn.
Please. We'll leave
Sorry.
my age and my broken army body behind.
Do you consider Dystopian Dawn to be OSR style or OSR adjacent?
Honestly, neither. Don't get me wrong. I like some of the stuff the OSR has done, and I appreciate where they originally came from. I stay out of all the drama. I don't like that. I don't like when creators start attacking each other because I come from the mindset was way back when we were all the outcasts. Oh my God, you play RPGs, you freak. And we welcomed everyone to our table. You know, we red, blue, gay, purple. Nobody cared. We were all there to have fun and game. And it didn't matter that, oh, you only play that version? Well, you suck. No, hey, what's that version about? It started conversations. Oh, well, that's interesting. I play this game. And that's how we would introduce new games to each other. And then now, I don't know if it's social media or something in the water, but everyone attacks each other. And you've seen me on Twitter. I'm very, nope, let me step the hell away from this because I don't want to do that. That's not, we should be a community of nerds. You know, nerds and geeks. This is our hobby, our love. So my goal with this was I looked at all of the different games that I've played over the years. And I didn't want to recreate, which again, I'm not a dig on OSR, but in essence, that's what they did. They recreated old school D&D, right? I wanted something different. So, you know, I look back on like Gamma World, Traveler, trying to think, there was another Apocalypse one. I just forgot the name of it. Anyway, several other games like that. And I was like, okay, what do I like about that system? And what did I hate about that system? And the stuff that I liked, it's like, okay, how can I tweak that, make it a little more simple, more flexible? And anything that I hated, it didn't go anywhere near my book. Because I didn't want it to be rules heavy. Once you start playing, you saw a little bit when you play tested, it's very flexible. The way the rules are written is like skills, for example, you have a default of 0 in almost any skill. So you can try just about anything. Even though your character points at the beginning only lets you get, you know, X number of skills, it doesn't mean you don't know how to jump. It doesn't mean you can't pick up a sword or swim. You can try anything. And most games don't have that. So that was one. The other is the magic system is all about imagination. So what I give in the magic system is, okay, here's your left and right limit. So you've got your range, how much it costs to cast this effect, base damage. And then what you do is you mix and match different magical effects to create whatever the hell your brain comes up with. If you have earth and fire as your magical spheres, forces is what I call them, and you merge them together to create a giant ball of streaming lava death. Okay, you got the points. Let's see how far this stream goes. Let's see how much damage it does, etc., etc. And by the way, at the end, it looks like fuzzy bunnies. Cool. You can do all of that in this game. So, like I said, I'm not taking anything away from anyone else. I respect where they came from with trying to recreate the D&D that I love. I mean, if you see in my collection over here, I know we're on radio, so no one knows what the hell I'm doing. I only have first edition AD&D books. I have my DM's Guide, Player's Handbook, all the way up through my original deities with Baldobene and Cthulhu. I think the only new D&D book I have in there was the Monster Manual 2. And so that tells you how old it was. Yeah. So, like I said, I appreciate what they did, but I would say it's a very different approach to RPG design.
Yeah. So it's interesting how, because when you look at people who play like Powered by the Apocalypse games currently, the 2d6 system, most people just will stick with that. They won't go to anything else. But with me, it was like, okay, I've mastered this kind of simple narrative system. Let's try looking at some things that may be a little more complex and see how I can work with those. And that actually led to me more like actually looking because I've only played one game of 5th edition D&D since I've done this. I've always been an advocate for let's play games, but let's explore others besides D&D, besides Pathfinder, and all that. And again, I'm also not taking away from those games. If people enjoy those games, perfectly fine. But when I see how many things when people take 5e and use that to try to make these games, where they can easily go down to their friendly local game store and get a $20 book that can fit that same narrative or need as well. I'm just like, I don't see the point in kickstarting or purchasing all these 5e books when there was one that, say, the freaking gangster one I just mentioned from the 1980s. You don't need to make a 5e, Mafia module when you have that book right there to kind of do what you want. And it's actually funny because that will tie into, I was going to talk about how the mechanics work in the game with the dice rolls, because Dystopian Dawn is the fourth game I've now experienced that uses the kind of unique roll under mechanic. So basically, for those who don't know, because Dystopian Dawn does it, Dragonbane by Free League also does it, and then 2 other games, the gangster one I have does it, and then there's a very just kind of rules light one called Simple D20 that it's for free on RPG, and it's basically the same thing. It's a setting agnostic game, but it's roll under whatever your stats are. So that really makes it a very unique system, also in my opinion, because, like I said, not a lot of games do that. So now I'm curious to ask you, what made the decision to do roll under instead of stats?
Well,
or
originally,
stat mods, I should say.
Originally, when I was designing it, it was closer to D&D, where it was D20 high. And that's what that was. I told you when I first made it, I ended up just making another fantasy game, and I threw it away. I didn't want something like that. So I started thinking of all the different mechanics of the games that I've played over the years. And what struck me were the old games like Stormbringer and RuneQuest. They were percentile based. So your skills were all X percent. Like, say, your sword could be 37%. So you had to roll 2d10, d100, 37 or under to get your attack for that skill to work, and went from there. Also, GURPS is a 3d6 system, but it's under your skill. And I've always liked that mechanic. Instead of saying I have to reach this target or higher, like World of Darkness is another example. Let me throw a bunch of d10s and I have to get X number of successes. And blah. It's far too convoluted. So the roll under, for me, it feels more like my skill at 15 puts me up in the, I'm pretty damn good. And so my percentage chance of reaching a success is higher. And then I went one further than what other games do. Instead of it just being, okay, you hit, and either you got a normal hit or a crit, I decided that every roll in this game should actually matter. So that's where I came up with a factor of 3. So going back to the example of, say you have a skill of 15. For every factor of 3 you roll under, 12, 9, 6, etc., you get a bonus. If it's melee, that's a +1 to damage. If it's a spell, it could be increased range, damage, duration, reduced cost. It's all up to the GM. It's all flexible. But it means that anytime you roll, it makes a difference. And it's also, unlike most other games where, okay, I check a table or I have a set goal, I hit, boom, that's it. This is a comparison. So if I'm rolling to hit and the other guy is rolling to dodge, it's a comparison of who did better. So, like, say the guy to hit made it by 6. If it was a straight system, that's +2 damage, we're done. Well, the other guy, say he dodged by 5. Well, now we've only got a difference of 1, right? Okay, you barely hit. And I did that on purpose because that way it's more of a feat-based system. So your rolls and their rolls actually matter. It's not a check the table, because I always found that kind of boring. And I won't go on a THACO tangent, because unlike a lot of people who actually liked THACO, it was easy. Until, I think, 3rd or 4th edition, they screwed it all up. In 1st edition and 2nd edition, THACO was really simple. You looked on one chart, your X level, that's your to hit armor class 0. Easy. Can you add to 10? Okay. You now understand the system. And if you can't add to 10, you probably shouldn't be playing games. Anyway. But that was my mindset on it. I wanted something simple yet different, and I wanted every die roll to actually matter. So it didn't become just another throwaway. I hit, I missed, we're done, move on kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think something to clarify is when we keep saying we mention magic and spells, but we're not necessarily talking like in like fantasy staffs and wands. I think. What do you think?
Oh yeah, we are.
I was thinking more like, because when I remember the Time Warp, I think more like X-Men type stuff. Powers is how I was getting the vibe off of. Okay, so I guess I didn't realize that. So what I did
with the magic system is I've got it breaks down into 3 core elements of magic. You have nature magic, technomancy, and then you have cosmic. Cosmic is that balance of magical energy in between the two, that kind of generic playground, if you will. And that's what sets up the tone between wizards and druids. Druids use nature magic, elemental stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Earth, plant, water, animal, etc., etc. Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
You're good.
Coffee was coming back. And wizards have technomancy, which is energy, electricity, metal manipulation, all the way through necromancy. So that's first, their schools of magic is what makes the two hate each other. The other is how they use the magic. Druids can draw magic from the land. I call it harnessing because they're tapping into ley lands. For getting an extra boost, you're running out of mana. Okay, let me pull a little extra. But they do it slowly, so it doesn't hurt anything. A wizard has the opposite. It's called ripping because they don't give a shit. They pull straight from the ley line, and as they do it so fast, it also pulls radiation, kills everything in the area, like, screw your bunny and your plants, I don't care. I'm drawing that energy, and I'm using the attack, which often ends up, giving the wizard mutations. So wizards are, I wouldn't say evil, but they're power hungry, and a lot of the wizards are, let's meld technology with magic. So to create that kind of the Thundar the Barbarian type wizard feel, where your druids are more of your classic fantasy of, okay, we've got animal, earth, etc., etc. I'm going to throw a ball of a dirt clod at you, or I'm going to summon a host of birds, or whatever the case may be. And that's, again, in the magic system, you get to do and make up what it is your spell does. And I call those recipes. And I give a couple examples in the player's guide. I purposely didn't want to do a laundry list of spells like everyone else does. Which, honestly, the magic system was the hardest part of this game to create. So you've got, like, let me find an example. All right, so you have effects, like I'll look at the body force, which is cosmic, so neutral. So you have an animate effect. Gives you a base cost, an area of one target, a range is your skill level times 5 in yards, damage is 0 because it's not a combat effect, and how long it takes to cast. And what this does, the caster attempts to take control of a target's limbs. If successful, it's kind of a puppetry type spell. But you can adjust that, and it's resisted by fitness versus your caster. So if you wanted to, they could combine that with an attack effect to send the person into painful spasms. Anything you want. It's, you completely go, okay, this costs 6, this costs 4. Now I'm creating a spell effect that costs 10 to do a painful convulsion, Tony's painful convulsion spell. Have a Coke and a smile, drop on the floor and writhe like a chicken. That's the intent of the magic system. You as the player, the imagination is back on you. And one thing I describe in the magic system is kind of create your own grimoire. And like I said, that's why I call them recipes. So say you made certain effects come together and you really liked how that worked, write it down. Make it your own. You're now creating your own magical path that no one else has. And goes back to the character creation. So far in, almost 2 years of running this game, no 2 characters have been remotely the same. No 2 casters will ever be the same. Because going back to the fantasy side, I've also written it up. Say you want to be a fire mage. Okie dokie. You don't have to worry about anything else. You can just run around throwing fireballs at people. Old school magic. or an air mage, and your thing is lightning bolts. Okie dokie, you can do it. So that was the thing. I took elements of multiple magical systems and kind of melded them together, so that way the player has the flexibility to customize however they want their caster to actually be.
I really like that. Like, I definitely need to actually like sit down with this one day and just actually make a character that can play one of your games someday. Because like my weekends are usually, because I play a Horde Wars Basic has been my go-to game for everything recently. Great game, it's been my favorite. But I keep forgetting that I have this book, and I'm like, I need to play this actual game and get more of a feel of it. Since I already played one game, I need to learn more about it. So,
well, if you've got the time at 2:00 Arizona time, I'm doing a character creation walkthrough for a couple new players. So if you wanted to fly on the wall, if you don't have time to actually make a character, you're welcome. And then at 3, we're running Dystopian Dawn, and I'm having a blast right now because one of the gamers I met in December at the comic shop is now taken over as the GM, so I get to play in my game. I'm finally on the other side of the screen, and you know what? I love it. So, and I know that's biased because I created it, but I really am having a lot of fun with my character. His name is Tragic, which because he has a tragic background.
Backstory.
And of course, I had to make him give him an obnoxious voice. He's kind of like if Tarzan was raised by mutant apes who got wiped out by raiders. Yeah, that's my character's basic background. His mother was a 3-armed mutant gorilla. So I decided to give him a goofy voice since he was raised in New Rome, and that's where he learned to speak the human tongue. So I went with Tom Hardy's, what's the name of the character from Peaky Blinders? Alfie. Oh, it's kind of like, I'm going to throw a shit at him. Hey, and from the other side of the screen, it is so much fun. So that made me happy being able to have the tables flipped. And Chris runs a really fun game. And he's only GM'd a few systems. So him jumping into it, I think you guys are about the same age. So he's only played a few games himself. He's having so much fun in the GM seat. And that, like I said, I'm like a kid. I light up when I see someone, not me, running a game and having fun, and other people with me playing the game that I wrote having fun. And fun was the number one thing I put into this. I wanted flexibility, customization, fun. I wanted to bring all of us nerds back to the table to remember why we gamed in the first place. That should be my tagline. I like that.
So my first thing is, now I'm picturing, like, I would say you have Tragic walk in, and now you'll have Phil Collins playing in the background wherever he goes. That was my first funny thought about that. And then second was like, well, I was kind of like, well, yeah, you wouldn't make a game that you yourself wouldn't want to play yourself. Because this
was the first opportunity, because this was it took me off guard, because he's like, hey, would you mind if I ran a game? You know what? I'm going to stop the campaign I was running. Yes, go. And it's I dig it. I don't think a lot of creators actually get that opportunity to get on the other side of the screen. And I can't recommend it enough. It's been a really awesome experience for me to see both facets of the game in play.
Yeah, which actually makes me wonder, because like I was saying earlier, a lot of people, the content that does get made out is always usually 5e mechanics or supplements. So I'm wondering, like, how many people actually enjoy that enough that they want to make it and then run it themselves, or they just make it just because that's what everyone else enjoys. They're not going to play it, but they'll know it'll sell because it has 5e attached to it. So that makes me really wonder about that now. It's
funny, I back a lot of indie stuff just because, even stuff I don't use. And there has been some supplements that I've read that actually fall very well into the category you're describing, because I'll read through it and it's like, okay, I can see you kind of had a story with this, and it's not bad, because again, I don't like to bag on anyone, but it didn't feel like it was really play tested, or that like the person how can I put it? It didn't feel like the person actually enjoyed doing it. It was more like kind of like pushing something out to make $5 on a PDF. That makes sense?
Or more like they have this great idea and they want to put it out there, but they know the only way it's going to sell is, hey, you use 5e mechanics with it, basically. That's what I kind of think about. Or 5e, or I guess now in this day and age, anything OSR related also has been selling recently too. Like one of my latest games I backed, I think his name is Victor. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but he is working on a old school essentials supplement that's like modern. I think it's modern necessities is what it's called. It's basically like futuristic weapons, guns, and how you can bring those into your game. And I'm like, I've never ran old school essentials, but I could easily incorporate some of that stuff into like other games as well if I wanted to like take some of that, because I have some OSR games. Like I got Wretched, I got a Atomic Punk 2160.
I like the Wretched universe. I like the I just forgot their name. It's Miguel
and Sylvia.
Yeah, I love the Red Room. I like them. They crack me up. They get a little more controversial than I do on Twitter, but I like their products. They've got a great imagination flow, and I dig that. You can tell that they enjoy what they do, and that's nice to see. I do have some other OSR. Like I've picked up, a few adventures here and there just as supplements for the heck of it, for ideas. I keep looking over at my library, which I should point the camera one day for you.
Yeah, and I had another thing I was going to go through, but I forgot what it was now. Oh, yeah.
One game I should recommend to you that, since you're curious about games and it seems like you'd like mixing and matching genres, I recommend GURPS, the Generic Universal Role-Playing System. I didn't really get into 4th edition. I've got the books, but mainly because I started with 3rd edition, and I have a library of 1, 2, 3... almost 4 bookshelves full of nothing but GURPS books from 2nd and 3rd edition. 4th edition made the character creation a little smoother for new players. But for someone who's been running the game for so long, it wasn't enough of an enticement for me to change my game. I still run GURPS with my group here. I'm running a Swashbucklers game. The reason I suggest it is one core mechanic for every genre. And if you wanted to do a superhero, undead, fantasy, time travel, dimension portal game all in one with one system, that's GURPS.
Yeah, I do have it's a free GURPS 4th edition light PDF. I have that, and I've been kind of reading through that, make sense of it. Another one that I know is also like that is I think Chaosium has the basic role playing RPG, which works similar, but it uses the D100 roll under thing. That's what they use for that one, I believe. And
that goes back to Chaosium's when they did I think it was Elric and Call of Cthulhu and all the rest. They were a percentile based system. Chaosium's done. Well, they've gotten a lot of money from me over the years. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and the funny thing about GURPS is there's a guy I follow on YouTube. He does a lot of character creation videos, TTRPG reviews, and he did an RPG review on a supplement that's GURPS Furries. And as soon as I saw that, I went and I found it, and I'm like, I know a select few people that would gladly use this game, and I would probably be interested in just play testing that myself just to see how it'll work. Just because it's the anthropomorphic animals, and I know some people enjoy that stuff, so I'm like, why not? It's like, just little stuff like that gets my attention to make so you want to try games sometimes. If I know if there's like specific supplements that catch my eye with games, I'm like, okay, I'll go find the PDF of the rules, and I may see if anyone's interested in it, possibly. So, I just thought...
Well, that was the big thing that sold me on GURPS way back when, is their source books. Because they've got everything from Atlantis to Conan to Toon, which is you actually play like an old cartoon character, anvils dropping on your head, the whole 9 yards. It's freaking hilarious. It's completely leave your brain at the door, tongue-in-cheek, and I think it's like 1d6 mechanics. It's one of the easiest games ever made, and it's just silly and fun. And they did the Lensman, they did... it was a superhero one by George R. R. Martin. Wild Cards. So they cover the gamut where a lot of their books were actually based on classic sci-fi or fantasy books. Some are based on movies. Some just cover like alternate Earths. You know, what if the Rome never fell kind of thing. And all they do is like, here's a scenario. Do what the heck you want with it. And I think that approach is fantastic. When has kept them in business for 30 something, almost 40 years. Because they've even got psionics. They even did a World of Darkness. They were licensed back in the late 90s to do vampire, werewolf, and mage. And in my opinion, it's a lot better because the GURPS mechanics are a lot better than the World of Darkness mechanics. And it was a shame they were only able to do those core rules. And then White Wolf said, no, you can't make any more books, which made me wonder, did they realize that this other company was doing a better job?
So I'm a mixed bag when it comes to the storyteller White Wolf system. When it comes to like Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, because from a lore and listening to actual play standpoint, I enjoy it. But when I try to read through and get into the games, I get confused and I lose myself.
And newer versions, I'm going to be brutal, not just because I'm old. The newer versions, honestly, how can I put it? Suck. The original first, like when Mark Reinhagen was writing them back in the original 90s, there was nothing like that in the market at all. And World of Darkness with Vampire, when it first came out, was mind-blowing. And the original core books from that set, it sets a great tone. But I know that the storytelling mode is, I've never been full-blown storyteller. I mean, I used the term when we played Vampire, but I like you've seen how I run games. I'm very much, we are all part of a story. It's the player characters are the main characters in my world. Let's see where you take this world. That's what I'm all about. Where sometimes people will take the storyteller mode a little too far, sometimes way too far, and it becomes more of blah, 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 and eventually a player does something. And I'm not a fan of that style. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
You're fine. I was also going to say, for context, I think I kind of set myself up to not be able to enjoy it as well as I like to, because my first game that I tried to play was Wraith the Oblivion.
Ooh.
No. Because my thing was, when I listened to a couple actual plays of the lore behind it, it's like, you die. And now you're in this world playing as undead, and you're still like somehow interacting with the living world at the same time, depending on what you're doing. That got my attention right off the bat. That's like, oh, you're dead, but you're still like interacting with everything. You have like, depending on how you build your character, you have some powers. But then you have this shadow that's controlled by another player that gets to mess with you. That can either corrupt you or help you, depending on what their goals are. That got my attention.
Trying to suck your soul into the middle of oblivion. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds awesome. That sounds like it should be a really good game. And then when I tried to get into it, it all kind of went out the window. Like, it just became super hard. And then part of the issue that happened was players tried to do things without getting everyone's kind of like asking, or I don't want to say ask for permission, because I don't want to make it feel like you have to ask the other players for everything at the table, but they didn't run it by everyone first before they just did it. And that kind of like messed some of us up, and they kind of set the whole mood for the table off at that point. Yeah, it
becomes a detractor, right? When Wraith first came out for White Wolf, we all got excited, read through it, and I was like, it is an interesting concept. But the only way it really works is as an NPC in a World of Darkness game. It's great to use the Wraiths and whatnot, the Revenants, as NPCs. They fill in the World of Darkness nicely. Or if you're doing no more than like 2 players, because as soon as you have 4 or 5 players in that game, it devolves into chaos and depression. And we tried it. We went through the same thing. We're like, we are never playing that a game, because either someone's trying to turn us into soul coins, or the other player is messing with us, and we're not getting anywhere. It felt like just a constant drudge. And by the end of it, we were all more drained than enjoying a game. So after that, I would use do the crow. in World of Darkness. So they would find like this revenant who's trying to cross over, and it made for great storytelling with vampires and werewolves. And kind of the same thing in Changeling, which is the fairy one. They're a lot of fun to use as a backdrop in World of Darkness, but if you try to get into the lore, there's so many different facets. It ends up being really goofy, and it's hard to take seriously because some of the races in Changeling are just they're ridiculous, and it ends up just being more of who's trying to out prank the other, and you completely forget there's a story here. Everyone just kind of starts being asshats. So again, a lot of the supplements they did were neatly written, and they sounded like, hey, like you said, this would be a neat, environment. And then when you jump into it, you're like, this kind of sucks. We're not really having a fun game here. Yeah. I remember Wraith and
yeah.
Mummy was the other one we tried, and the characters were so OP it wasn't even funny. And we got a group of 5 mummies, right? Of all these ultra powerful, 5,000-year-old wizards that are, mummies in modern day. It devolved into stupid really quickly.
Oof, excuse me, the coffee just hit me too just now that I had. So it's funny that you bring up the Crow because I found the original Crow movie in a bargain bin at Walmart a while back, so I own it. I haven't watched it yet, but I plan on it. However,
Brendan Fraser, the first one was so good. All of the sequels sucked.
Did they make also a TV show, and now they're making a new version? I believe I've heard recently.
I heard rumors of a new one. Yeah, the TV show, it wasn't bad. It just really wasn't good. It was 90s cheesy TV. If you take it with a grain of salt for the 1990s show that it wasn't bad. It was better than the sequel movies. Give it that much. The sequel movies, each one got progressively worse. Yeah, but the original movie itself is much closer to James O'Barr's comic, The Crow. And Brandon Fraser was amazing. So,
and also because
Brandon Fraser, sorry, oh my God, Brandon Lee. My mind went back to the Mummy.
You're good. But also another thing that it made me think of is if you're a fan of D20 Modern or the 3.0, 3.5 D&D system, there's a game called Everyday Heroes by Evil Genius, and they're more popularly known for making movie supplements, and they have one for The Crow.
Yeah, I picked up a few of their PDFs. I dig it.
Yeah, I got The Crow. I got the Highlander one because I'm trying to convince this other podcast I've been listening to let me run a Highlander game for them because they've all talked about liking Highlander, and I'm like, well, there's this, and I just happen to have it. So, and then I also got The Crow. They got one for Pacific Rim, I think, and they have one for Rambo as well. They have a Rambo supplement. As well, and then they just kind of got some. It's like a generic kind of armies and special ops book, if you want to run that. And I think they're working on an actual, because it's all modern day type stuff. There's not really magic, but they're working on a magic supplement because a lot of people have been asking about it and stuff for movies that do involve magic. Because Highlander has some magic to it with some of what it does, not full on fantasy, but yeah.
No, I'm a big Highlander fan. That was actually, I remember we went and saw Highlander 3, and I was still in the Army at the time, and a bunch of us went to the theater. We were in Germany, and at the end of it, without even thinking, it shot out of my mouth. There should have been only one. And I didn't realize I'd said it so loud, it echoed in the theater. My buddies about fell out of their chair dying. My wife and I, give you an anecdote. This is how I knew she was a keeper. She corrected me on a Star Wars fact when we had first started dating, me and a buddy of mine, and we both stared at her like, boo. But I threw out, just a joke from the original movie, Highlander. I forget what our conversation was, but I went, do as I say, woman. And she looked me dead eye and said, I'll stay right here, which is the next line in the movie. And I went, oh, I need to marry this woman. She's a freaking keeper. Oh, my God. And I actually got through, I think it was GalaxyCon. I got Christopher Lambert's autograph for a Highlander picture with him and Heather, his wife in the movie. and he signed it. So it's for my wife. It was one of our anniversary gifts. We got that on the wall. That's one of our favorite movies. I think we watch it. We've got like 10 movies we watch like once a year. That's one of them.
Yeah. So, as much as I love and enjoy talking about this, and like movies, Highlanders, because again, this is just an organic conversation. I love it. I also now want to be able, let's talk about your newest kind of adventure module for Dystopian Dawn, Time Warped. Yes. So I don't know how much I'm allowed to share about like what I got to experience with the playtest. I don't know if you want that to be just completely public. You can just tell me right. All right,
go for it. I'd love to hear someone else's point of view on it. And as I recall, you had a damn good time playing checkers.
Was it checkers or chess? I don't remember.
It was checkers.
It was checkers. So
with the sea monkeys.
So how Time Warp begins for the listening audience is you are a pair of astronauts from 1999. Is that correct? Yep. That get sent into space.
They were escaping Y2K.
Exactly, escaping Y2K, and we're put in cryostasis, or an accident puts us in cryostasis. I can't remember how it leads up to.
So the original premise is the ship Astraeus is leaving Earth pre-Y2K to find, it's like a counter-Earth, and it's actually based on real events and a real planetoid that was discovered in the 90s. Or actually, I think it was discovered in the 70s. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I don't have the book in front of me. So the intent was to send their brightest and best, so scientists, et cetera, to find and start colonizing this new planet, and then the ship would come back and, people would escape Earth and we'd start a new Earth type thing. Along the way, wackiness ensues, cosmic comets, insert whatever, B science fiction movie event you want happens, and the ship gets stranded for centuries. And it was just a fluke of another meteor storm or something, probably the one that, maybe one of the ones that wiped out the Earth for Dystopian Dawn, that sends them back. And as soon as they get back into our universe, the system automatically kicks in. Everyone is still in cryostasis, except for those that died. And the homing beacon activates. And it brings them back to land at Cape Canaveral. What they don't know is it's 500 years after the world ended. So that chunk of islands where you guys first landed, that's where you found the surf lemur is what I called them. It was actually a joke. They're giant sea monkey mutants. And that started as a doodle on my part. I was sharing it on Twitter, and everyone liked the doodle, and I went, well, I guess sea monkeys are now part of the game. So they were living in the office environments of the first ground floor of Cape Canaveral. And I actually had maps of like the museum and all the areas that you can go through modern day to create the layout and the atmosphere. And what I did is I broke it up into huge chunks where most of it is sunk, it's gone. So the ship did go back to where it originally landed, but there wasn't anything there. That's why you guys start sinking in irradiated water.
Yeah, because literally how the game starts is your ship crashes, you wake up from cryostasis, and now you realize, oh, we're sinking, let's grab what we can and get the fuck out of here, basically was what happens. And I love you say best and brightest, and yet I played Eric Nomad, my character, as Zach Brannigan from Futurama. So, or at least I attempted to, because that's
it was fun.
Like that. Yeah, and so I think we grabbed almost everything important except for like a tent. That was the only thing we didn't grab, but we were thankful that it never really rained on us throughout our travels as we were trying to explore. So that was kind of in our favor there, because we got some food, some water, a couple like diving suits, which
you got the astronaut suits.
Astronaut suits, which kind of doubled as diving suits in the sense.
So that's how you used them. Yeah, it worked.
Yeah, because what happened was, so we also got a raft, which we were able to get ourselves in, and we got to shore. And then, we got to a rock clearing, and that's where we found the place that led underground, underwater. So my character and one other character put on the suits, and we go underwater, and we find this weird room that's got these little rock standing structures, and we're just kind of exploring. Nothing's really happening. Nothing's really picking up interest for the moment. And then, we see one of these big sea monkey-like creatures comes in. And I don't know how it devolved to me being the one to try to communicate with them, which unfortunately failed. Like, there was no way we were able to communicate with these guys, but we were somehow, we were able to somehow communicate with them, I guess, in some own weird way. And basically, yeah, it devolved to me playing checkers and losing multiple times against the sea monkeys. Because I don't recall, I don't think I won against them at any point. And then the king comes, but eventually the sea monkey king, I'm calling them sea monkeys at this point, even though that's what they kind of are.
they were based on sea monkeys. Surf lemur was actually me looking up thesaurus for what's alternate names for, sea and monkey.
So the king eventually comes in, and I lead the king back to my companions that were still with us, because I think there was 4 or 5 of us that were playing.
I think there were 5, yeah.
Yeah, and because the other guy that went down with me, he returned. Well, I was stuck playing with the sea monkeys.
And he returned, he ditched you.
Oh, yeah.
He was the security guy, and he ditched you.
Because he thought something was going to happen. It's like, oh, we'll just let him be. If he dies, he dies. But no, I lose checkers multiple times, but I developed this weird relationship with them. And I bring the king to my companions, and we try to, again, talk to the king. Didn't work, but he left us some parting gifts of some food, and I think there was a couple other things he left. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember everything. This was a while back.
A couple spears.
Yeah, it was a while back, and it was a 6-hour quote unquote one shot we did, and I was like, because we also timing wise, because where Tony is, he's 2 hours behind me because Arizona is weird and doesn't recognize daylight savings time. So.
Which makes me very happy, because daylight savings time should have went the way of the dodo 100 years ago.
And I completely agree with you on that regard. I actually do. It's just weird on my end, because I'm 2 hours ahead of you. And I think by the time it actually came to an end, it was almost 1 a.m, I think, on my end, I want to say. But I had fun, because, we had that scene, and then we go out exploring. And then during I don't know how it was, we never really got attacked by anything. Which was surprising as we started to explore. And then, as we get towards the civilization we happen to see in the distance, that's when the mutation started to kick in. And I became this 4-eyed cheetah, I want to say it was. Because I know I got more eyes. I can't remember if it was 4 or more. I can't remember at the top of my head.
I think it was 4.
Yeah, I got another set of eyes. And then I started to basically turn into a cheetah. I got the fur and all that. Did I sprout a tail? I don't remember if I sprouted a tail or not.
I don't remember either. I think you just, because it was the mutation you got was animalistic appearance, and so it
may have been just the fur then. May have been just the fur.
I think it was just the fur, and I think you had ears too.
Oh yeah, and then I can't remember, some of the other guys got mutated too, because after a while, even because it didn't affect us at first, but the planet was completely still radiated, so the radiation after some time began to kick in, and that's where all the mutations come in, and it was right on time too, because as we enter this city, we see all these other mutated people basically all around us, and we're absolutely confused, and that's when we finally realize, oh, we're not on another planet, we're back on Earth, and it's just fucked.
Yep. So, how I wrote Time Warped, there's actually... there's a campaign story that you can run with it. There's actually 2 campaign stories you can run, or what I did is I wrote up each area, and each area has a random event encounter table. Each area also has notes on intrigue going on in the area, so what's actually happening, and plot seeds for expanding. So what I did is you can run the campaign straight through as either the stranded astronauts, and that is the premise is trying to figure out, did we make it to the new planet? Because that's the original thought, is you're on an alien planet, and that's how it played out. That made me happy. Or you eventually find out the role playing, holy shit, no, the world ended at some point, and now we're stuck in it. The other aspect, which I ran the next play session, was your normal characters in Dystopian Dawn, and the people of Coastal, which is the, I call them provinces, but the city that you guys went to with all the mutants and wizards and techno shit, and the little robots all over the place. The ruler, Elijah, placed a bounty because they heard about the crash, and they're all about tech because he's a wizard. And he placed a bounty on these things called astronauts. So The other group was actually playing hunters, trying to find the astronauts to claim the bounty, and they started at the opposite side of the map, up by Terminexus, where you guys start like down, Cape Canaveral. They started more up in, my geography sucks, Virginia, I think, something, and they worked their way through the swamps.
Yeah, because how we ended our one-shot was we came across this entrance, and there's a camera kind of there, and one of the characters who happened to have a gun showed off the gun to the camera, which led to us being immediately knocked out and basically tied up and held hostage, in a sense. Was how that one ended.
That was Terminexus.
Yeah.
So what I did with Time Warp is, again, you've got those two completely separate, and I write up a new way to create characters. So you can actually create an astronaut now. That's part of Time Warp. I also include beast mutant packages, because originally when you mutate, you're a human with mutations. So in this, I created 4 villages that were actually animals that have mutated into bipedal speaking creatures. And so you had, I think you guys only ran into one of the villages. You went into Beaumont, which was cows and pigs and sheep.
That was an interesting one, for sure.
And then the other is Splatterskull Junction, which is Ape City, gorillas and chimps. And then you have Monsanto Hills, which is lizards and snakes. And they're actually, had you got into it, you would have found out that they're actually ran by a creature called Brain Eaters, the Naga Men. They're in the GM's guide, in the Creature Compendium. They're actually running the show and they have a whole bunch of steam-powered gizmos. And so it's like a steampunk of evil lizards and snakes that are going to take over the world. And then the fourth one was Paxis, which is dogs living in an old warehouse. And they're good boys. So the premise was you had dogs, cows, and the dogs and cows get along because the dogs feel bad for the cows because, well, they need herding and tending too. And the cows just want to run their crops. They're like, hey, peace, man. I'm a cow. But the apes actually had plans to take over Coastal and wipe out any human along the way. And the snakes also had a similar plan, but part of their plan was to use the apes as cannon fodder. So there was all this intrigue is written into it. The GM could use or discard any part of it that he wanted to. And then along the way, you've got Coastal, where I wrote that whole thing up of the who's ruling it, what shops are there, et cetera, et cetera. And then Terminexus and Seclusion Falls. So all 3 of those areas are detailed briefly in the player's guide. Then expanded with the true lore and the NPCs in the GM's guide. But there's a running joke I have in there where you start reading about it, and then there's a note that says information like redacted by security agent 837 or something like that. And that's on purpose. So what this book does, like all of my source adventure books, it expands that area. So it gives you all of those secrets in those very secluded, mutant-only environments. So now you find out what the underground complex of Terminexus actually is. You find out what Seclusion Falls is, which Seclusion Falls, you guys didn't get over to that area, is one of my favorites because it's actually a experiment by mutants. Oh. They're living underground and the whole place is CCTV. And a place above it looks like a walled bazaar. So it's like a trading post. And there's a pier not far from it so they can get goods and whatnot. And everyone in there looks human. But they're all androids.
Oh, wow.
And they're programmed to eventually start fucking with the PCs. Because the mutants are underground watching, monitoring, and taking notes. And periodically, they would spray like irradiated gas to see how you'd affect to it. Or hallucination gas to see what happens. Or an android would say something really weird that made no sense whatsoever just to see the human reaction. So it is nothing more than a mutant experiment to fuck with humans.
Huh. That's interesting. That's definitely one I'll have to try when I get that book in because as of course, again, I play tested that the first adventure at least made sense for me that of course I had to back it, which thankfully it got fully funded. I was kind of afraid for a moment it wasn't going to get there at one point, but it
Yeah,
got
I got
there.
a
So
little
I'm very
nervous in the
happy.
middle.
I think what I've heard about a lot of Kickstarters is there's usually like the last week or so. There's always a big push that people will start pledging. When like that last week is when the majority of them will start kicking in. So I was very
I've gotten
happy
lucky.
that
I've ran 3 Kickstarters and all 3 succeeded, and all 3 had me biting my nails on the last few days because it was like right there, and then all of a sudden, bam, we crossed the line. It's like,
there's only been one Kickstarter that I backed that didn't get funded out of all the ones that I have backed over the last couple of years. And it's got to the point where it's like, okay, I kind of need to lay off like a lot of the Kickstarters, because even though like a lot of them are great and I get my money's worth, they're still pretty pricey on some of them. Because I think the last one I was looking into backing was like almost, it was like $100 for 2 books, and I'm like, I really want it, but I can't afford it right now. So
that was one of the things that another thing I set out with Dystopian Dawn. Granted, I'm not in the red, which is nice. I'm barely in the black, but I priced all my books well under what most other major books are, and I did that on purpose. So I don't make much when I sell the books.
yeah,
But for me, it's, people are enjoying the game, and it's still, I'm the first year and a half. But that's what I try to do. Is same with the Kickstarter, and I also do a lot of discounts in the Kickstarter. So some of the books you get through my Kickstarters are barely above my price of shipping to me.
Yeah,
so,
because
and that's why also I do the digital as well as physical, because some people just like the PDFs, and you can sell those for a lot cheaper. And then the GM screen, I'm actually looking at a new one. But go ahead.
Okay. No, because I was going to say, because I bought basically the entire package from you, which was both books, well, at least my version of the GM screen, that unfortunately was a fluke among others, that I told you about a while back, because that was the one where they cut too deep so the edges came off. If you
know what? That. Remind me later. I'll send you a replacement.
Oh, I told you not to worry about it, and you just sent me PDFs of the other 2 adventures that you had, so, because, I mean, I don't use GM screens that often, but I figured, heck, for the big deal as it was, I didn't mind it. And then
because I get those through GamesCrafter, and I contacted them, and they replaced them. And they apologized for it. What it was is their laser cutter went too deep.
Yeah, so, it doesn't really bother me that much. I just figured I'd let you know, because you didn't realize that it was like that until you checked it. But what I also really liked was you have a screen for the players themselves, which I thought was really handy as well.
Yeah, that was actually something I'd never heard of. They had a template on GamesCrafter, and I was like, well, that's kind of crazy. I'm going to try it. So I ordered one for myself as the proof, the prototype. And I was like, okay, it's a lot smaller, but it's neat that I can put in a few tips of character creation and the basic rules. And it gives, a player screen, which I also had never heard of. So I thought it was a neat idea.
Yeah, kind of on the same lines as a cheat sheet. That way you're not having to flip to the book for everything. You have it right there for you. And then just a little... The dice bag also came out very well as well. The thing has not come off, so it's good quality. So I like that, because I'm like... Go ahead.
The proof for that dice bag, when I got the image, looked like crap. It looked like... Because the black was supposed to match. But the proof I got, it looked like someone did an iron-on decal and you had a big black square. So I was really worried when those came in. But when I first opened them, I was so happy. They blended nicely. The company did a great job with those.
And so, so I get, again, like you said, it wasn't that expensive. I really did get my money's worth from all this. I look forward to getting Time Warped. And do you have physical copies of those other adventure books too, or is that only just PDF?
Oh, no, print. So if you want, I'll go over the source books real quick. Also, send me a message after this. Remind me. I'll shoot you the digital of Time Warped.
I got it because I already got it.
So okay.
You did the Kickstarter. You sent it all. You sent the PDF already out through everyone.
Well, I wasn't sure if you got it. I've got a list. I have an Excel spreadsheet. I keep track of who gets what. But I'm senile. I'm not going to remember all that.
Young grasshopper, wise old sage.
I just wanted to make sure that you had it. That was all. So my intent with the source books, when I first started building Dystopian Dawn, it was one book. and it was well over 400 pages. And I was like, holy shit, to print this is going to be astronomical, and no one's going to buy it. And so I then went through and I stripped. Okay, what's player only necessity? What's the GM only? So mainly I focused on anything that was a reaction table, combat table, all the monsters, all of that, that became the GM's guide. So I purposely split them into the player's guide. Here's everything you need to know to play the game. Character creation, magic, psionics, and I put equipment that goes from low tech through medium tech. And that's on purpose. And then in the GM's guide, player's guide, there's a lot of common lore of what you think the world is. In the GM's guide, you'll notice all of that lore is expanded, and there's an opening story in the intro called the Alpha and the Omega. That's the true timeline of what actually happened. And I wrote it up in such a way that GMs can still insert their own ideas to expand that history to make their own Dystopian Dawn world their own. So it's enough of a bad. Honestly, as a writer, that was a pain in the ass. It's got enough info to show you here's where the wars, the famine, the dome cities, where everything went south and why. But there's plenty of room for you to go, you know what? I had this group, they started here. Or this facet started here. Or I'm going to introduce a meteorite in Florida because I can. It's written that way on purpose. And then when you get to each of the territories and provinces, it includes actual write-ups for the NPCs. And here's the real lore. Here's some really dark history that went into the creation of this place. And it's enough, again, so the GM can go, that's cool enough background, but I can add to it. So you're not locked into every Dystopian Dawn game is going to be, if you're in Term Nexus, here's what it is. No, you're in Term Nexus, you could have a completely different environment or different experience with each group going to the same location. And that was why I did that on purpose. So with the source adventure books, campaign books, my intent was each one expands a part of the what's left of North America, which is what Dystopian Dawn is on right now. So Danger Zone was the first one. Danger Zone is set in the middle in the Nether, which is the second most irradiated part of the map. And it's lots of mutants, lots of freaks, lots of evil raiders. It's a very hostile environment. And you're sent by the Baron, the warlord of the Barons, to reclaim something called, they think it's a sleep stop something machine, because they're all about something called tourism. They don't really know what tourism is, but the Baron is determined to make tourism. So the Barons, the Barons is actually like if Disneyland was destroyed and then threw back up. So you've got like a broken Ferris wheel, teacup rides, buildings made out of, chunks of roller coasters. That's what the Barons is. And lots of Christmas lights all over the place because, tourism, whatever it is. So the joke about the sleep stop machine is when you finally get through everything, it's a pinball machine. And I had to change the name a bit, but the original joke, it's a ZZ Top.
Oh, wow.
Pinball machine. So Top, sleep top, haha. Anyway, play on words, and there's 6 new areas that are written into the Nethers that you can explore either going straight through, pick and piece, grab that at some time, ignore them, however you want to mix and match. So that's Danger Zone. And then the next one, the Secrets of Sacred Mountain, is in the Black Hills. And it's an area between 3 territories, so kind of a no man's land. No one's actually claimed that. And what I did is it's heavily steeped on Native American lore. So you have the last tribe of Native Americans, which is actually an amalgam of multiple tribes.
Oh, that's actually interesting.
How they survived the last 5 centuries beneath Wakantankahe, which is loosely translates to Sacred Mountain. It's the I just lost my thought. The monument. Asunko is his name, and I just lost my train of thought. The warrior monument where they're carving the head. I feel stupid right now.
I feel like I should know this too. Not the Washington Monument.
No. It's not like Geronimo. It's Man,
Mount Rushmore?
no, it's an actual. They're still in the process of carving it out. It's an Indian head, and it's
Oh, is it
from
the
a chief.
like? It looks like he's supposed to be on a horse, like pointing like out in a direction, almost kind of looking.
Yeah, but they've only got like the head and like part of the arm done.
I know what you're
It's
talking about. I do not know its name to save my life. I know exactly what
well,
you're
his
talking
real
about.
name was Asunka. I just can't remember. Damn. Anyway, so it's based off that. They dug way down, and the original founders, they grabbed the best in geology, et cetera, and they created a society of mixed tribes of their best and brightest. Engineers, historians, agricultural experts, et cetera, and then they lined all the walls of the mountain, because it's hollow, with lead. So underneath is where this tribe has actually thrived, but it's all very low tech, and they kept it that way on purpose. You've got lots of magic there. There's druids, shamans, and throughout the area, you've got lots of creatures you'll run into that are based on Native American lore. And their paths, how they progress through their lives, it's all based on, like their jobs and everything else, is based on Native American lore research. And that was a lot of fun to do. The hard part was, okay, well, how do I take this, convert it to a sci-fi fantasy game, and still be respectful to the content? And so I did that. One of the guys I'd met in Phoenix, who's gamer, he and his dad used to travel to different schools to verbally teach their history of Native Americans. And so he was my sounding board. So I would bounce the creatures, the lore, everything off of him, and he's got credits in the book, to make sure that I was not, screwing up the lore, and I was still being respectful to culture. And he loved it. So that's where the secrets of Sacred Mountain are. And it's driving me nuts that I cannot remember the name of the chief. So anyway, there's a few different hooks. In that, I also introduced the tri-tip trading post, which is not far from there. And that's something that can be inserted into any game. It's actually a former, like, Amazon warehouse with only 2 stories. The rest was destroyed. And there's a few trading posts in there and a bar. And the guy who runs the bar, you think that he's, a mutated human with dwarfism, but he's actually a fae. He's actually a lunar dwarf. So, and I wrote that out in such a way that you could take the tri-tip trading post and drop it in any game you wanted to. From there, you find out about, hey, there's someone looking for a map. There's someone looking for some, mystical MacGuffin, blah, blah, blah. And you run into a few people along the way. One is a former resident. She was actually a wizard who was booted out of Sacred Mountain because they don't like wizards. They don't like tech. They see that as like Nanabozo, the trickster god, evil. And she saw them as a bunch of stupid old fools. So she actually wants the party to go there to retrieve sacred waters because of their healing properties. And honestly, and you'll find out as the GM, that's a bullshit lie. She wants it because she's trying to build like a techno wizard Iron Man suit.
Oh, wow. That's kind of cool.
And so the game could eventually turn where they end up fighting her. I think when I ran through it, the party negotiated with her, made friends with the Asunke, became part of the tribe.
Oh, wow.
And it was pretty wild. So it was a very fun one. There's also mists that surround the mountain that will irradiate you. So that builds out an area between Sumerica, New Rome, and Paradisium, which then leads to the third book, the new one, Time Warped, which is all Paradisium. Which is the most irradiated part of the world, and that's predominantly mutants, mutant plants, mutant swamps that will eat you, and now stranded astronauts. So my intent with each of the source books is I have 6 planned out. 3 are now done. Each one will expand the 6 core territories. The 4th one that I'm working on now, the working title is Cowboys and Mutants.
Ooh.
And it's formed in Alamex is where you start, which is predominantly what's left of the southern U.S. and a little bit of Mexico. And it's kind of like Firefly. It's ranchers with guns and some steam tech, some druids thrown in for good measure because why not? a little bit of everything, but it's, they actually have horses, cowboy hats, the whole 9 yards, and they're the only ones that actually have a legal system that involves hanging people. So, that's going to start with like bounties and missing people and crops withering and dying. And what you'll find out is this will bleed into New Rome and the border of the Nether. So you've got a mutant warlord that has an army of mutated monsters. He's actually going to start wreaking all kinds of havoc because they need a water supply that's not in their territory. The New Rome is where you're going to meet a bunch of legionnaires that are deserters, and they've discovered a Fallout vault and turned it into New Capua. So they've created a arena where they go and capture mutants and battle them in the arena. And you're also going to find strange cache points of New Rome, like guard towers that are on the Alamex side. They're not supposed to be there. Like New Rome is slowly encroaching and expanding their borders without telling anyone. So in this one, I'm actually going to introduce some higher tech guns, different types of armor, magic, and the other one is a mad scientist from New Rome who was kicked out of the capital of Roma Prima for being too extreme. Which, when you read about New Rome in the GM's guide, for him to be too extreme, it says something. He's obsessed with these magical artifacts that he swear are buried along the borders. And so he's defected, and he's got a group of mutants and deserter legionnaires, and they're scouring for these items. So you're going to get cowboys, mutants, mad scientists, vaults, the whole 9 yards in the next one. And that'll cover Alamex and a little bit of New Rome. The next one will be, I think my working title is Vikings and Robots.
Ooh.
Mostly Sumerica, my Vikings up in the north, don't you know? Yeah, we got you here.
No.
And they're pretty much, it's kind of like Canada, Minnesota, and, Vikings all smashed together. Low tech, water is water is their only power source kind of thing. And druids, nature magic they respect. Anything else is wrong. So lots of barbarians. And New Rome has gotten a hold of a pre-atomic submarine. And so they're taking out Sumerican ships. So now I'm going to introduce sea warfare. So you're going to have Viking ships fighting a submarine that is pretty much run by robots and like a skeleton crew from New Rome. And then the sixth one, to wrap it all up, will take us back to Haven, the Motor City Madhouse, the Gearheads, which I loosely based on Waterworld. So lots of smoke industry. They build cars there. It's all about the gasoline and choking environments and smokestacks. So the running joke from Haven, anyone who goes into Haven has difficulty breathing because of all the smoke and the nastiness. Anyone from Haven who leaves it has difficulty breathing because, what the hell, the air's clean. This is weird. So my last one to finish out this continent will be kind of a giant death race, Cannonball Run style, from New Haven all the way to the West Coast. And encountering all kinds of stuff along the way in a giant vehicle race. So then that'll wrap up the known world, which is North America. Then I'm going to move on. These are plans for next year, obviously.
Oh, wow.
A new world book. I'm going to do Dystopian Mythos. And it's going to be Europe. And it's all going to be heavy fae, but old school, like old world fae, not happy fae. Like angry Brothers Grimm type fae stories. Very little human. So it's going to be a complete reverse of the continent now in Dystopian Dawn.
It's an interesting combination of science fiction and fantasy kind of merging together.
That's the whole game. It's sci-fi and fantasy smashed together in the post-apocalypse. So with Dystopian Mythos, I'm actually going to introduce new races. So you could actually play as an elf, a dwarf, a fairy, a leprechaun, etc., etc.
Leprechaun. I know a guy who would play a leprechaun.
And humans are the minority on that, and a lot of them are hunted because the Fae blame them. It's tech is what ruined everything. And once tech was gone, that's how magic came back to the land a couple of centuries after the end. And that's where the Fae came, because now there wasn't all this techno crap destroying the magic ley lines. So it ties back into the core lore, but flips the story. And then the next world book I plan to do is Dystopian Space. So a group actually escaped the devastation and terraformed Mars. What's it like 500 years later?
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I've got huge plans that are hopefully running through the next 2 years. And again, each source adventure book builds on the original lore. And the reason I chose that route is if I was trying to fit all of that lore, all of the provinces, the territories, the villages into one player's guide, it'd be, a freaking encyclopedia.
Yeah.
So I figure with this in bite size, and I write it up so you can run campaign style, or you can piecemeal. So you can take, hey, this area is written up in Secret Mountain. I dig it, but I want to drop it into my own game. Okay, go for it. And I wrote them up like modular on purpose. So there you go. There's Dystopian Dawn. The other crazy plan I might do, and again, it all depends on time and money. I'm looking into a next year of releasing a box set. And with that box set would be the core rules.
Mm-hmm.
And once I'm done with all 6 of the source books, I've already started working on drafts for it. I'm taking all of like the new mutations, new skills, new equipment, character creation rules, all of that, and putting it into a player's compendium. And all of the creatures and NPCs and higher tech stuff into a GM's compendium. So that way it won't have any of the adventure material that are in the source books, but it'll have all the extra stuff. So as a player, you won't have to look through 7 books if you wanted to create a different character. You'd have the player's guide in the compendium where it would have, hey, look, here's new mutations, new skills you can choose from. Bam. And it'll be, kind of a quick reference. So instead of doing a 500-page almanac, I figured I'll break it up into pieces. And someone else suggested I do an almanac where I just take the core components of the new areas and put it in a separate book so any GM could just take that and use that however they want without the campaign. So probably looking at, the core books, the compendiums, maybe the almanac, a nice pretty map, and, dice and screens in a box.
Mm-hmm.
But again, time and money.
Exactly. Well, I am definitely looking forward to seeing all those future books come into be, because all that's catching my attention as I'm like, ooh, cowboys, ooh, Vikings, ooh, terraformed Mars. So it's hitting it's activating kind of like my peaks of interest in my brain when I think about stuff that I would like to try. And then when we talk about space travel, because I've been really looking into this setting, 2 words have come into my mind that a lot of old school Dungeons and Dragons players will recognize: Dark Sun.
Oh yeah, Dark Sun was a fun. Well, I don't want to say fun because you died a lot, but Dark Sun was a really cool environment. A buddy of mine who still games with us, he ran a Dark Sun. He converted it to GURPS, and he ran. It's been about 5 or 6 years, but it was a lot of fun. Dark Sun is one of the more interesting old school environments that D&D came out with to kind of flip D&D on its ass.
Yeah, and especially with the setting for Dark Sun, how it involves psionics and a bunch of other stuff as well, and I think they have some variation. You could easily convert that to play in the Dystopian Dawn game.
Easily.
It'd be easily able to do, and I came across someone, they made an old school Essentials version of that game with a player's guide and a game master's guide. And then they gave you the files for hey, if you want to print yourself, take these files and go to Lulu with it. So I actually got a old school Essentials player's guide and game master's guide for Dark Sun. And then I don't use Reddit, but if it comes up in the search history, I may look at it. Someone made a Dark Sun compendium in the 5 separate books covering the races, the cities, some extra lore stuff that came into it, because I've discovered it. Now I'm into it, and I can't stop looking into it because it gets my attention.
Was one, like I said, one of the more unique settings of the books that came out near the tail end of TSR. And it was pretty cool. It was definitely, when it first came out, we all dove on it and played it, and we were like, what in the is this? This is wild. This isn't D&D. This is like Barsoom. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and so because I was also like trying to explore, like, okay, maybe I would run it with this game, maybe I run it with this game, and now that you mentioned space, I'm like, I think I may end up having to use Dystopian Dawn now, possibly for it. I don't know. There's a bunch of different games you could easily convert Dark Sun to if you want to be able to play it, because like I could possibly, like, because I was looking at Horde Wars being able to do it, because Horde Wars has a lot of like monster stats and stuff for it. It's just the tweaking of the numbers and stuff to make it work, but overall it's like
Dark Sun would work perfectly with Dystopian Dawn, because I have mutant psionicists, I've got irradiated destroyed worlds, I've got mutated animals, mutated monsters, all of that, and magic. It all fits in perfect.
Yeah, and I'm like, it wouldn't be that hard to throw in like humanoid insects like the Thrycreen in there too.
They're already in the GM's guide.
Yeah, exactly my point. Exactly, like
I
especially
called I think I called him the Atiak. The artist who drew him is fantastic. They're loosely based, because I really liked the Thrycreen when they came out. I thought they were one of the cooler monsters. And praying mantises are cool. Let's be real. Yeah. So I had to make up my own praying mantis. They've got 6 arms, and I think they do like steam tech as well as low tech weapons. So they're in the GM's guide. Check them out.
I definitely because I've flipped through both books. I haven't actually like sat down and just read it like word for word kind of deal. But that's definitely something that I need to do for sure, because this is on my list of games that I want to play. Well, I've already played. This is on my list of games that I want to run as well, because it's very interesting, and I like the setting, and I like the story. Because that's also one of my big things is, if I'm able to tell a really good narrative story with it, I'll learn the game and I'll run it. Oh,
there you go. I'm going to bring this up to the camera for you.
So no one else can see us, but he's showing me the picture of his insectoid people that are in there. Yeah, that's actually really cool. It's also got that the old school like D&D artwork style feel to it as well. So I really respect that.
I'm actually glad you said that. That's going back to what drew me into D&D in the first place, was art class. So when I sat down to create the game, figuring out an art style was a pain in the ass. So I made it simple. What drew me into the game? Old school art. The old D&D, like done the old little comics inside the GM's guide from, back in 1981. Little stuff like that. So that is the style that I try to emulate throughout all my books. There's no AI art in any of my book. I hire all of my artists. Some of the art I do myself, but I hire people that are much better than me. But that's my stipulations. I look through their styles and I explain to them, and I'll even send examples from old books. I want old school, like Jeff D., that type style. I want classic role-playing game styles. So kind of my pitch on this is, the game is simple enough that anyone who's never played a role-playing game, you can jump in and have fun. And if you're an old grognard like me, you're going to see the style and you're going to recognize it. And like what you're doing, you're going to see elements, Dark Sun, Traveler, Gamma World. You're going to see all of those different kind of influences all melded into one system.
Our mutual friend, the Dungeon Delver, he's been running a first edition Gamma World game on his YouTube channel. And I recently bought the first edition Gamma World POD off of a drive-thru. So I'm waiting for that to come in now, because like I've been told about like all the other editions, but I was told if you want to at least get into it, get into 1E. Yeah, exactly. Same with Warhammer Fantasy. Everyone said first edition Warhammer Fantasy was the best. I got a PDF of that. It was only $10 on drive-thru. Nice. So that's because I want to explore like a bunch of these other like more complex games. Like I want to explore Warhammer Fantasy. I want to explore like old school D&D. I have the files were given to me. I have a copy of a basic expert D&D book that I have. So I've always wanted to look at that. Now, given I don't like THAC0 that much, I find it very confusing, but I'd be willing to try to at least learn it and understand it, because
I'm going to break it down really easy for you. Pre-3rd edition D&D, which in my opinion is when they fucked up D&D.
Yeah.
And it got worse from there. 3rd edition, in my opinion, it's like they introduced anime, with all the goofy little races, and they screwed up the combat system, and they made THAC0 more complicated than it ever was before. Third edition for me, I played it a few times. I didn't run it, but I played it, and I didn't enjoy it. It felt like Bessem, Big Eyes, Small Mouth. It's an anime role-playing game. Fourth edition was like, we want to be GURPS and an MMO all at the same time, but unfortunately we suck. Fourth edition is the worst.
Yeah, that's why I always
edition for me is very watered down, and it's like a nerfed version of D&D, where a lot of what made D&D really cool is gone, and a lot of like the danger. If you don't have that danger element of you're gonna die, or something, the rewards at the end have no value. And that was the give and take of D&D. So 5th edition, I don't like. I've read through like the changes to spells, and I've compared 1st edition. I'll pull them up, and I'll look at them and go, why did you rewrite this perfect spell? Because now you just made it stupid. Like, I think it was, what was the one example? I want to say it was Raise Dead. No. Regenerate. So Regenerate in 1st edition, there was a reverse of that spell. That instead of regenerating a limb, you could wither the shit out of a limb and really screw someone up. They took that out in 5th edition. It's like it's like they went out of the way to go, are you 10 years old and afraid of everything? Let's play this. That's I should stop there because someone's going to get mad at me. But I don't like it. So the original THAC0 in 1st edition D&D was really easy. There's a chart for fighter classes, a chart for magic users and illusionists, a chart for thieves, assassins, and like bards were on the category, and a chart for clerics and druids. 4 charts. You looked at what's my level, and it had from -10 to 10, 10 being the worst, -10 being the best, and then 0. So you looked up, I'm level 6 warrior, here's the 0. On that chart, it says my THAC0 is 12. I'm inserting a random number. So now I know to hit armor class 0, I need to roll a 12 or better on D20. Ta-da, easy. Oh wait, he's got an AC of -2. My THAC0 is 12. 12 plus 2 is, holy shit, it just became 14. Or, his AC is 2. So that's easier. So 12 minus 2, 10. That's it. THAC0 was a base 10, but in 3rd edition and beyond, they convoluted the shit out of it. And for no reason, and it only got worse until they got rid of it. But the original old school, like look at the 1st edition GM's guide, it can't be easier. And again, I'll make the joke over and over. If you can't count to 10, role-playing games might not be for you. So. I do agree with later versions, they fucked it all up. And they added a whole bunch of really weird rules that make no sense, that made THAC0 confusing. But in its purest form, from the grand poobah of role-playing games, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, it was easy as shit. I was 12 years old when I learned D&D, and I had no problems with THAC0.
And Gary Gygax deserves way much more love than the shit that everyone's been giving him these days. He was
Absolutely.
He was the creator of D&D, creator of almost the original OSR in a sense. And if it was not for him,
him and Dave Arneson, they paved the roads. They are the great grandpa grand poobahs of everything we know role playing.
And if it was not for him creating D&D, we wouldn't have all these games and other versions of D&D that we have. And we also probably wouldn't have, because basically it was people trying to play D&D be like, I don't like this, I'm going to now make my own game. So we wouldn't even have all these other games if it wasn't for like D&D coming around to begin with. So that's part of the reason why I have a hard time just sticking with one system, because there's so much to explore out there. And even so now I'm at the point where it's like, all these new games are good. Let's see how the older ones now hold up in comparison. And there are some where it's like, these older games are actually really good. Or I may not like this one that much, but this newer version of it I may like more. We're both very adamant and open, opinionated about what we like and don't like. I'm kind of because I've never really played that much 5e. I'm kind of indifferent on it. If people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not
don't get me wrong. I stick by what I say all the time.
Agree.
Play what you like what you play. My problem is, again, I started on the original D&D, and I've seen it devolve over the years. Now, again, some people, that's their introduction to role-playing is 5th E. That's all they know. And they're happy with it. And for those people, rock on. I hope you enjoy it. Have a great game. But for me, it's what really poisoned me on 5th E isn't even the mechanics. What poisoned me is the rabid fan base that attacks the grognards at conventions. That happened at Gen Con, or Gary Con and Gen Con. It was Gen Con, where they were openly attacking them, calling them racist, misogynist, any ist you can imagine. Like, where's the respect? What is wrong with this era? That individual, has never created anything. You never will create anything. All they want to do is shit on the giants that did create it. And that honestly is my biggest detractor from anything 5th E is the rabid fan base, because can I put it? They're horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. The people that enjoy playing it, it's a game, you're having fun, more power to you, love it. It's the ones that have to go out of their way to attack everything else that infuriates me. Just like you said, they shit on Gygax, like this new book they're putting out from Wizards. Mm-hmm. It's 100 pages or so of shitting on people that invented this. And when they all first got together, they were nerds in a basement playing war games with, miniatures, Napoleon armies. And someone went, hey, what if my captain did something different? So they introduced like a leadership skill. And it grew from there into, I think it was Blackmoor was the first fantasy setting. That was Arneson. Of, hey, what if we took what we're doing with all these feudal miniatures and added some mechanics to it and made it more of a Tolkien role-playing game? And then Gygax was like, well, shit, what about Conan? What about all these other great stories we've all loved? What if we made a game that has mechanics that covers magic and everything else? And those two freaking geniuses, those social inept geniuses, got together in a basement and created the I don't want to say the groundwork for what we all enjoy now. And if it wasn't for those guys, and some of the other older classics like Ken's St. Andrew, St. Andre, I can't speak, and Kevin Simbita for doing like Palladium and Tunnels and Trolls and all the others that went on afterwards, we wouldn't have the glorious hobby, and we surely wouldn't have the 10,000 flavors of the hobby that we have today. So those old guys deserve the respect.
And all the people, because how people talk about Gygax, didn't mean to hit my mic there. When people talk about Gygax now, it's the same way they talk about I forget his name, the guy who created the Cthulhu mythos. And they talk about like Lovecraft, all the like how bad people they were in the past, how wrong their views were. And I said, in the year 2024, I sit here thinking, I'm not going to care about a man that I've never met in person about something he did way before my time.
Well, that with Lovecraft, a lot of that is based on someone projecting their own insecurities and reading his book without realizing in 1923, it was a very different world. And they went on attacking, saying he's racist and all this other stuff. Lovecraft wasn't racist. He was a freaking weirdo and a recluse who hid in his house, and he would write these little short stories. His only outlet was sending out short stories and sending notes to other like indie writers that wrote for these crappy little publications that maybe 100 people read, and then they grew from there. I mean, his stories, it wasn't he sat down and went, I'm going to be a racist and blah, blah, blah. He described individuals as they were described in that time. And this era drives me crazy, because you can't take what are today's bizarre societal norms and values and beliefs and place it on something over 100 years ago. It was a very different world.
Yeah, because
when they do that, they also he's been dead for 70 years. You don't know this guy. You've read something that someone else made a comment about, that someone else commented on, that someone else commented on, and then grew from there into bullshit. You don't know any of it. So yeah, I get irritated when I read that. Same like with Robert E. Howard. People will bag on Conan's this, that, and the other. I was like, you don't know shit. Robert E. Howard was an aspiring bodybuilder who liked to box. And so that's why Conan is this big burly dude, because he should be the biggest guy that walks in. He is the main character. And that was Robert E. Howard's view. But to create his world, he did an immense amount of geographic research and history to create Hyperborea. And a lot of people don't realize all of that went through, and even more don't realize that Lovecraft and Howard, for case in point, were pen pals. Mm-hmm. And they would send crazy letters back and forth about their different book ideas and just about life in general. And it's pretty wild. I've read some of them. They're pretty wild.
Yeah,
sorry,
because
went off on a tangent. Some of my favorite authors.
No, you're perfectly fine, because, like I said, I don't play Call of Cthulhu, but I love listening to the Call of Cthulhu actual plays, or just people playing it. I like the stories they do with it, but I'm tired of every time someone's playing Call of Cthulhu, they always have to add in the thing about, Lovecraft was racist, misogynistic, whatever he was. And even if he was, I don't care about that. I'm not there to listen to people preach. I'm listening to people enjoy playing a game. And it's the same thing with Gygax. Of course, Gygax from his time may have different opinions than what we do now. I don't care about that. I care that he created this great game and that he's not getting the acknowledgement for it that he deserved for it. Another example I have is my very first TTRPG I ever played. It's called City of Mist, powered by the Apocalypse-based system. You play modern day, and people have powers based on myths, monsters, historical figures, etc. Just depends. And I've had conversations with the creator of the game. He's this Middle Eastern guy, but how our views completely do not align with each other on stuff outside of the game. But because he created such a great game that I enjoy so much and introduced me to this world and to this hobby, he has my respect for that. The only reason I still will talk to him and still play City of Mist is because it is still a great game that he made, despite the fact that me and him will not agree on like half the stuff outside of TTRPGs that we may talk about. But I don't delve into that. I try not to delve that into too much on my podcast, but because of all the slander campaigns I had done on me, because when I tried to talk about something with someone in private to keep it disconnected, they would then expose that, and then they will try to say that, it's tied into this now, but it's like, no, that's just my opinion. That has nothing to do with what I do with TTRPGs. You said that it's like someone put it on a post once, I'm asking for your sword, not for your voting record. And I think that's like the perfect way to put it. Like, who you are at the table.
You also nailed something that I wanted to throw out there in Dystopian Dawn. A lot of games nowadays, and even movies, it's all about, to quote other people, the message. I don't like that. All right? My beliefs are my own. Your beliefs are your own. And just like you say, you don't agree with dude, but you like his creations. And that's what the hobbyist should be. Focus on the game. So in Dystopian Dawn, in the player's guide, right during character creation, I put a blurb in there because someone had asked me during one of the cons way back when about homosexuality and racism, and I'm like, I honestly don't care. That's my viewpoint. You be you. If you're happy with who you are and you're not hurting someone else, and it's of legal consent age,
exactly, legal,
I don't
always
care,
legal,
but keep it to yourself. I don't want to hear it. I don't care. It's none of my business, and I don't judge anyone on that. So in the player's guide, I actually have a blurb in there about it. It doesn't matter. Color doesn't matter because every color skin exists in Dystopian Dawn. You could be green, red, purple, polka dot. Doesn't matter. None of that matters. You play your character however you want to play, because all of those beliefs, norms, prejudices, all of that died with the explosions. When the world ended 500 years ago, that shit's gone. What matters now is survival. And so I kind of summarize that in the player's guide. I'm like, hey, without saying it, if you want to play Dystopian Dawn where everyone is multiple sexual variances. I don't know how many letters there are now, LBGTQ, etc. Then play it that way. I don't give a shit. Have fun. If that's what makes your game fun and your table likes that, do it. If your table doesn't like that, okay, don't do it. It's that easy. And I try to keep that mentality within the game. It's all about fun and customize. Make the game to fit your group of people that are playing. Have fun with it. And anything else, that's superfluous. You don't need to inject modern day politics into a make-believe world. I get into those conversations with people that they feel that politics has to be part of every game. Like, no, it really doesn't. I mean, I'll invent an imaginary political system for certain areas, whether it's a baron or a council or whatever, but it's imaginary. It doesn't mean a damn thing. It doesn't reflect my views as a person. It's some bullshit I made up to have fun with. And that's what should be seen. Hey, this game does blah, blah, blah. He's an emperor. Oh, no, we've got a president over here. Okay. Woohoo. Who gives a shit? Have fun.
Exactly. It's the same with, I'm also, another thing I'm a big fan of is I'm a World War II history buff. And I have some World War II TTRPGs. They're based on historical events, yes. But your characters are fictional. They weren't actually there for that. The actions you may take will be completely different than how, say, certain events play out, unless you're one to actually recreate those events. But even then, it is still just a game. It is still just a story you're telling. It's even though, you're playing in, I forget what the timeline for World War II at the moment, so I apologize for not knowing dates. If there's a lady that comes to my table and she's going to be the first female soldier in this battalion and she's going out there guns blazing, perfectly fine. I don't give a shit.
Yep.
Let's have fun with it. Let's see what happens. And if she allows some other stuff to happen with what may have been there with the times, it's all just fictional. And if I have permission from the player to do such things, I'm going to roll with it and see what happens. It's nothing personal against anyone at the table, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Again, my philosophy on role-playing games has never changed. As a GM, my job is I create a world, and I follow the hero's journey of writing. The hero has obstacles they must overcome in order to accomplish their journey, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. And what I do is I create the world, I give you that backdrop, I create the obstacles. How that story plays out is completely up to the individual players who are the star in that book that we're writing together. And that's been my philosophy for decades, and that works with every game I've ever run. Players are the stars, and I also, my homebrew fantasy world, which started in D&D, now it's GURPS, over 40 years of gaming. Atonus is my world. I think I just started the 7th Age. That game evolves, that world evolves based on cataclysmic actions taken by the players. So if you follow, we do a year-long campaign and you've overthrown a government or killed a god or raised a cult or whatever, all of that, as the GM, I will now write into my lore. You have just helped shape the next era of that world. And all the players that I've gamed with over the last, forever, love that. So they'll see, something like, say, we'll play in the next age. It's 100 years later. Well, you'll see, oh my God, there's a monument to my old character, right? Or a book of spells was written based on so-and-so's PC's wizard. You'll find shit like that. And I do those little hooks so that way there's a shared involvement with the evolution of the game, so everyone's part of it. And that very simple, well, it's complicated to write, but that very simple mindset, honestly, I think is why I always end up being the GM, and I rarely encounter hostility at my tables. I mean, there's a jerk here and there, but as the GM, it's my job to weed out that jerk and say, hey, you need to go, you're disrupting the group. But all of this other stuff that everyone projects nowadays, I don't understand. For me, you nailed it. It's role-playing. It's an imaginary character. If you have to be you in that character you're playing. In my opinion, you're not role playing. You're just adding a skin to yourself in a video game and trying something out, but you're still being you. So you're not actually stretching your imagination, and you've missed the mark on the intent of role playing. That immersion of being an elf in a fantasy world, that immersion of being a galactic adventurer hopping around the moons of Saturn or Mars and encountering space dragons. You're losing the whole point of role playing is to immerse you into something that you are not.
Exactly. I could have said there myself. And I think that's kind of the perfect way. This was only supposed to have been an hour, and we're gone almost 2 hours with this conversation because
it was I'm sure there's plenty you could hack out. It was a very fun conversation.
Yeah, we probably could make this go another hour just as both of us talking if we ever decided to, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. And you probably have other stuff, probably more important than this you gotta go do, but I appreciate that for this first episode of my Over the Table show that I get to talk to you and talk about this game, which, again, is just one to shine the spotlight on podcasters and independent creators like yourself. And especially with your history, how much you come from when it comes to the hobby itself. It's nice to get this aspect from someone who's, even though I'm a millennial, I'm still freshly new to this hobby. I've only been doing this for playing games and doing this for like maybe 3-4 years now. It, as I like to say, started in the year of our Lord Savior COVID-19. So
nice. Well, if I can put in one last plug, I finally pulled the trigger and launched my own website.
Exactly. I was going to ask, tell everyone where we can all find you.
FracturedBrainStudios.com.
All right. And where can we find you on X as well? Let's put that out there as well.
I'm at Dystopian_Dawn.
All right.
And I'm also on Facebook, but I rarely use it. So.
Yeah, I don't use Facebook that much either. I have to remember my username for Instagram. Because
Instagram, I'm Tonicus Rocks, ROX.
Nice. You think I would have all this done by now, because Over the Table is actually one of my side shows I'm doing for my main podcast, which is the Roll and Free TTRPG actual play podcast, where I will just be doing, it's kind of like a mixture of solo series and group stuff, where it's like I'll just explore various TTRPGs. And depending on if people like Dystopian Dawn or not, it may be a one-shot, maybe a whole campaign. If it's a whole campaign, that's going to get its own show entirely, because that's what I'm doing with one of my other shows that I'm doing as well. So you can follow me.
If you ever want to jump in and record one of our sessions, and with you as a player, I welcome it.
I will make sure to keep that in mind, depending on how it goes, because I'm trying to take things slow because I almost overwhelmed myself with how much I wanted to do originally. So I
understand that completely.
So you can follow the Roll and Free TTRPG podcast on, it's just Roll and Free TTRPG, and that is going to be its own podcast. But my current podcast I've also been doing, it's Nails and Kneecaps, which is a City of Mist Knights of Paintown campaign. It's the official campaign book from City of Mist themselves, and I've been running that. The first episode is already dropped, and that's just going to be monthly. And I may only be doing this one monthly as well, depending on like how many people I interview. So I'm just putting that up there now for everyone. So these shows will be once a month, just depending on timing and everything. And so, yeah, Nails and Kneecaps, you can listen to that episode now on your available podcasting platform. And again, you can follow me at Rolling Free TTRPG on Instagram. All right.
Oh, can I put a plug in for another creator?
Go ahead.
The Elven Maid Inn. I love her. She's one of the funniest, sweetest people you'll ever meet on social media. And she just launched, I think it's Tales from the Tavern?
It's either Tavern Tales or Tales from the Tavern Volume 1, yes.
And in that, she interviews me. And I've also got an article where I discuss how to have fun with random encounter tables and make them not suck. And she also did a showcase on her group creating characters in Dystopian Dawn and how much fun she had. So that's all in her first issue.
I was actually planning to mention to shout her out too, since we brought her up. So that way, you can get the PDF for free on DriveThruRPG, or you can order the physical book either on Amazon or through DriveThruRPG, depending on which you prefer. All right, thank you again.
She's just. I can't say enough nice things about her. She's really about bringing creators together, and she's just a fun person to chat with.
She is a sweetheart. I agree. All right.
And last one, fracturedbrainstudios.com.
Yep, where you will actually be able to purchase these books from him of Dystopian Dawn as well. So there you can get them. Like I'm holding up to the thing right now, I have both the Player's Guide and the Game Master's Guide. And because I backed on Kickstarter, I will get Time Warped, and I do need to get my hands on those other 2 books for sure. So those are.
I gave you the digital for the other ones, didn't I?
You gave me the digitals, but now that I know that you actually have physicals for those, I'm eventually going to order those from you as well. Now that I know you have physicals of those as well.
And if you want, just shoot me a message. I'll give you a deal. I've got a couple in stock.
Of course. So, once again, Tony, thank you for coming on and sharing about this awesome game with all of us. And
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Now that the over-the-table discussion is over, let's have fun and roll some dice.
Take care.